Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have a Honda generator. This is EG1900, I think it is, 00X. Let's see if we can get this guy running. Stay tuned. So, I've not did anything to this. I've checked it for compression. So let's check the fuel, the oil. I probably won't even try the spark. I think we'll just check the fuel and oil and see if it starts. So, that's pretty tight. So make sure it's got some oil. Hopefully it's good enough to run it. It's actually really clean, that. Surprisingly, it's actually pretty decent oil. Now I know this is stood for many years. I don't know how many years exactly, but we're not talking one or two, we're talking quite a lot. It's quite a bit of rust built up. The tank, it actually has fuel, a tiny amount. It's pretty dirty, it needs to come off and be cleaned, that's for sure. There's quite a bit of loose debris in the bottom. So, but it's enough fuel, it's covering, there's a filter at the bottom, it's just covering that. So we'll turn the carb on. Is the carb on? Yeah, the carb's actually on, so the carb should be full. Let's turn on the generator and give it a few pulls and see if we can get this thing to fire up. Just noticed this obviously isn't the correct power plug. They've had to cut away the box to replace this. Hopefully it works. The engine is on, fuel is on, it's been on the whole time, which is probably not a good thing. It means this fuel is pretty grim. Choke is on, plug is on, and let's just try it and see where we're at. Got a bit of smoke. This is very sticky, needs to clean. It's wanting to. Let's give it half a choke. That's bad fuel. So it's only running on choke, which is expected. I mean, that fuel is pretty grim, so that doesn't surprise me really, but it's running. That's a good sign. So I've hooked up my adapter. We have the grinder connected, which runs at 1200 watts, and this is 1700. So this will obviously power that perfectly fine. Make sure the circuit breakers are on. Put it 230. I'm going to start the engine up on choke and see if we get power. Great stuff, we have power. That's very promising. So get this out if I can. May need to put a bit of silicone spray or something in there. It's a little tight. So I think next step is we'll drain the oil, pull the fuel tank, pull the carb. Carb needs cleaning, fuel tank needs cleaning, and we need fresh oil. So let's get that done. So the oil has been replaced, it's got fresh oil, so that's dealt with. I've removed the fuel tank, so it's loose. I was just going to pull the hose, which is down here. I was going to remove that and just remove it. To get this back on, you will need to remove the shroud. Now the pull start is very sticky. As you can see, it's kind of just hanging about. So this needs to come off. So I may as well remove the pull start, the shroud, and while I'm here, get the carb off. So let's get them removed. This will just slide off. Didn't realise that. Is that too short? This is the breather hose. Oh no, it's okay. I thought that was too short to fit into the top, so that's okay. The carb will just slide off once you get it about halfway down. There's normally a bit more slack on the fuel line. We'll just pinch that fuel line off. And just pry off this fuel line. And that can just hang over. And then we'll get the fuel tank out of the way. So I wonder if I've got a replacement for this spring. It's a bit slack. But normally you pull the carb off halfway, and then this rod will line up with a groove at the top, and that just pulls out. Then you can remove the carb. That's the groove at the top I'm talking about, because when the carb's on, that will actually be like so you can't actually remove the actual rod itself, and that is really sticky. And that is the gasket on the floor. So I've been giving this a look over, and it all seems pretty decent. We don't have any broken fins on the flywheel, which is nice. The gasket is okay. The valve cover is okay, it's not dented. So let's get this old fuel out of the tank and see how bad it is. Actually really clean. So the tank is cleaned out, it's a lot better visually, and inside is nice and clean. Just need to reattach the hose and the filter, which I'll clean out, and then we can call the fuel tank done. So we're missing the clamps off this, so just get myself some spare ones, put these on, and we can call this done. The fact that the carb runs, it's probably going to be something to do with this jet down here under this cap. I will remove the float and the ball and the actual motion tube. You have a sort of sump filter here. I'll remove that and make sure it's nice and clean and not full of gunk. But generally I will just remove most of the parts and clean it all out with some carb cleaner. I don't think this needs a bath in the ultrasonic. I think that's a bit extreme. So let's start with the ball and see what we get. That is tight. Wow. The fuel stinks. Absolutely stinks. So let's have a look. Oh yeah, it's pretty crusty, but it's soft. I think because the fuel has been sitting in the bowl all this time, it shouldn't be that difficult to clean out. This maybe could benefit from a bath in the ultrasonic. You don't want to risk pulling any of that through the jets. That will just block them up. Do you know what? That's actually not bad. I think this will clean up pretty good. So let's inspect the float. Oh wow. So the emulsion tube is up in here. I don't know if you can pick that up with a bad light. Don't know if you can see inside, but that is well and truly gummed up. You can hardly even see the grooves for the screwdriver, so that needs to come out obviously. Just remove the float. The float is obviously working because the fuel tap was turned on. If that wasn't working, there'd be no fuel in the tank. Yeah, it's clean, it's just grubby. Let's see if we can get that emulsion tube out of there. Yep, I think we got it. Yes, there we go. I've not damaged it too much. I wonder if that was already damaged actually. Possibly, or it could have been myself. Sometimes these are quite tricky to get out. It's actually clear. I don't know if you can see that. It's actually clean. So can we get the emulsion tube out? That is the next thing. Sometimes if you apply pressure, it's not going to fall out. So if we apply a bit of pressure from the top, there we go. Let's have a look. So the bottom is clear, but the top, you probably can't work that out. Don't know if you can see that, but the 3 holes on the right are clear all the way around, but the ones at the top are full. So give them a clean out. Just poke a bit of wire through each of the holes. And what I like to do is put carb cleaner through one end, hold the other end, make sure you wear eye protection, and pull the trigger. And you want to look for a nice even pattern coming out. That one's sticking a bit still. That one there has nothing coming out, so just go back through. And check for daylight, which I'm quite happy with. That's much better. So that's the emulsion tube done. Let's just do the jet. It's really clean this anyway, but just put some carb cleaner through it. In fact, before we carry on, let's just give this a quick clean. So I mentioned the pre-filter. Let's give this a check, make sure this is okay. There's usually a bit of debris built up in the bottom of these. Yeah, there's a bit, not much. This is a sediment bowl basically, and this just collects any dirt and debris that might actually be in the fuel tank and get past the filter. It should in theory sit at the very bottom and not go into the carb. I'll probably not help things by running this. I probably should have took the carb off and cleaned it regardless. This has been sat for some time and the fuel looks suspect, so I probably should have given it a clean. Never mind, that looks to be okay. I am actually going to put this in the ultrasonic just to be on the safe side. It's off. The ultrasonic is on at the minute, heated up. It's only going to take 20 minutes, so I figured I'll get that done. I'm just going to take off these gaskets before it goes in the ultrasonic. You want to be very careful with these that you don't damage them. If they feel they're not going to come off, you're probably best leaving them on, unless you have replacements on hand, of course. So that is the bottom of the carb done. It's this one up here which I think is going to be the reason why it wasn't running off choke. Although the emotion tube was half blocked, which will not be a good thing. That would not be helping the engine at all. You basically remove the idle adjustment screw, and then this just pops up, and this is nearly always gummed up at the very bottom. There's a very small hole. It's really tight to normally get these through, but that needs to be clear, and if it's not, you're gonna have some problems. So this is going to go in the ultrasonic for about 20 minutes. We'll get this back out, put it back together, and this can go back onto the engine. So the carb is all cleaned. It's nice and clean. There's no dirt or debris left, so it should function as it should. Everything, including the bowl and the sediment bowl, is nice and clean. You have the float, which is cleaned up quite nicely. This did float, so that is okay. The jets, the passages are all nice and clear. Don't know if you can make that out, but everything is ready to be reassembled. So let's get this back together and get it back onto the engine. So the emotion tube just drops in. You can't see it yet, but once you put this in and screw it down, that will push that into place. Get your jet back in. I tend to have it so it's just touching the throttle, kind of like that. That should be fine. Let's get the needle and the float back onto the seat. These Honda carbs are really nice and easy to work on. The sediment bowl, get your O-ring, and that just screws back in place. Then get your choke lever, and that basically just sits on like so. So let's get the fuel tank back on first, and that slides in them two holes, and then down, get the fuel line behind the governor, because the fuel line comes up and then onto this mount. So let's get this carb back in place, the fuel line attached. Now just bring it off a little bit so we can get this in line. Like so. I couldn't find a spring to replace this one. It should be okay. It's got tension, so that should be fine. It's just a bit twisted. So that goes on like so. So don't forget your gasket. That needs to go on next. and then your air filter housing, and the breather slides in just long enough to get into the valve covers, and we have control over the fuel and the choke. So let's secure the gas tank, make sure it's not going to go anywhere when the engine's running. One last bolt to put in. You could remove this engine switch if you wish. That will be easier to get access, but this is fine. So the air filter is nice and clean, so I've got no problems putting that back on. There should be a rubber gasket insert, but that's missing. That's fine. So I'll get this put back on. The one thing I do want to address is this pull start. Now, it's very sticky when you leave go. It kind of just jams up. So I'm just going to put some lubricant in the front and get some down the back. Hopefully that should help with this jamming up. Not too fussed about getting on the rope. Pretty fair to say the rope is dirty already, so as long as it just frees it up, I'm happy with that. I think we can see that's a lot better. So let's get this back on. We've only got 2 bolts, there should be 3 holding this on. I will have a one elsewhere in the garage somewhere. I'll get that later on, put that on, but for now 2 will do the job. So the fuel has been on for a few minutes and it has not leaked. I've moved the bowl around. The bowl was pointing this way. So if you want to store it, you want to drain the bowl. So just putting it at this angle, it just gives it easier access to remove the bowl itself. So fuel is on, choke is on, engine's on. Let's see how many pulls it takes to start. Magnets have somehow attached themselves to the frame. Right, here we go. So there you go guys, one more engine done, one more generator up and running, ready for work. Engine's running very nice. I've tuned it into 50 Hertz. I ran it about 52 unloaded. Once loaded, it went down to about 50.2 Hertz, which is pretty much where you want it. Output was great. It ran a grinder at full power, no problems whatsoever. So this is done and ready for work. I don't know if I showed you guys the oil. The oil is pretty nasty. It's pretty thick and old. Don't think I filmed this bit, but I did take the plug back out, cleaned it up on the wire wheel and set the gap. The gap was actually 0.5, which is way too close. These should run about 0.7 to 0.8. Now I normally run mine at 0.7, and in theory when the tip wears down that gap will widen and run to 0.8. So I normally set these for 0.7. This was 0.5, which was way too close. So I've opened the gap, cleaned it up and put the plug back in. So for a little generator, it's quite a nice little generator, and hopefully it'll do someone proud. So I'm going to end this one here guys. So like always, please like, subscribe, comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one.